On August 26, 1660, the 22-year-old King of France, Louis XIV, entered the city of Paris with his newlywed wife, the Spanish princess Maria Theresa. A grand procession of hundreds escorted the king along the main avenues of Paris, while crowds on both sides of the streets cheered and shouted in celebration. This was a grand ceremonial entry into the city, specially organized to welcome the newly married royal couple back to the palace. Paris had been preparing for this event for over a month, and the procession was set to pass by several key landmarks before finally arriving at the Louvre. The façade of the Beauvais mansion on Rue Saint-Antoine was adorned with silk ribbons and decorative banners. The owner of the mansion, Baron de Beauvais, and his wife stood on their balcony with their family, eagerly awaiting the passing of the royal procession. Among the crowd, the most dazzling figure was undoubtedly the lady of the house, Madame Catherine de Beauvais. She was dressed in an opulent French court gown, her head, neck, and hands adorned with extravagant jewelry. Seated in the center of the balcony, she constantly gazed in the direction from which the procession was approaching. An hour later, accompanied by resounding music and cheers, the grand procession finally appeared. Then, something unexpected happened. When the young King Louis XIV, riding his majestic white horse, reached the Beauvais mansion, he slowed his pace slightly, removed his hat adorned with red feathers, and offered a smile and a nod toward Madame de Beauvais on the balcony. In return, she responded with a deep curtsy. Though the moment lasted only a few seconds, it was enough to make Madame de Beauvais the center of conversation in Parisian salons for the next month. What kind of woman could make the king pause and acknowledge her in the midst of his grand wedding procession? This public display of royal favor stirred jealousy among the Parisian nobility. However, for those familiar with the court's inner workings, this was hardly surprising. Madame Catherine de Beauvais held no official court position, yet she played a pivotal role in the life of King Louis XIV. She was the woman who took the Sun King's virginity, the first in his long list of mistresses. It is often said that a man never forgets his first lover, and in the case of Louis XIV and Catherine de Beauvais, this sentiment could not be more fitting. Catherine de Beauvais was born Catherine Henriette Bellier in 1614 to a wealthy merchant family in Poitou. Her father was a prominent textile trader with considerable fortune. At the age of 20, Catherine married Pierre de Beauvais, a well-matched husband of similar status. Together, they had 7 children and jointly managed the family's textile business. Thanks to Pierre de Beauvais's exceptional business acumen and the high quality of their products, the Beauvais family became the official textile supplier to the royal court. This connection allowed Catherine de Beauvais to enter Parisian high society and, with her remarkable social intelligence, secure a position as a lady-in-waiting to Queen Anne of Austria, the reigning Queen Mother. Catherine's appearance was rather distinctive. She was not unattractive, but she had only one eye. Her other eye was a glass prosthetic, which she rarely revealed. During the day, she typically wore a specially designed silk ribbon to conceal it. Despite this, Catherine was extremely popular at court, particularly among men. This was likely due to her seductive personality and bold, uninhibited speech. It was said that she had a strong passion for sex and, unlike most noblewomen, openly embraced and enjoyed its pleasures. There is ample reason to believe that this unconventional, one-eyed beauty of the court possessed exceptional skills in the art of love. Her physical imperfection did nothing to deter men's enthusiasm for her. During her years at court, Catherine de Beauvais had numerous noble lovers, including high-ranking figures such as the Archbishop of Sens, Louis-Henri de Pardaillan de Gondrin. Catherine's mistress, Anne of Austria, became Queen Regent of France after the death of her husband, Louis XIII. She took control of the kingdom's affairs and paid close attention to the education and upbringing of her eldest son, Louis XIV. Anne was a remarkable female political figure. After 23 years of marriage, she finally gave birth to an heir. When Louis XIII passed away, their son and successor, Louis XIV, was only 4 years old, leaving Anne to shoulder all the responsibilities and pressures of ruling France. Anne's marriage was far from happy. She and Louis XIII were the same age, and she was married into the French court at 14. However, her husband showed little interest in women and went to great lengths to avoid his marital duties. There are two prevailing explanations for Louis XIII's behavior. Some believe he was naturally asexual, while others suggest he was homosexual. In any case, despite being one of the most renowned beauties in Europe, Anne never won her husband's affection. She spent most of her life neglected, and after suffering a miscarriage early in their marriage, Louis XIII blamed her and subsequently avoided her altogether. For years, he refused to visit her chambers, choosing instead to spend his days hunting in the forests of Versailles with his attendants. The position of a foreign queen without an heir in Paris was a precarious one. Anne endured 23 years of careful, cautious existence, navigating court politics while living in isolation. Then, by sheer chance, Louis XIII spent the night with her, and at nearly 40 years old, she miraculously conceived. The birth of a son was nothing short of a divine gift to Anne. 2 years later, Anne gave birth to another son, whom she named Philippe. From that point on, she and her 2 young sons became inseparable. Through countless struggles and with the support of Cardinal Mazarin, Anne ultimately triumphed over her political adversaries, suppressed 2 large-scale rebellions, and successfully raised Louis XIV to adulthood. Having fought hard to secure her political achievements, Anne was determined to prevent any unforeseen disruptions. Having suffered the hardships of a husband with little interest in women, she deeply understood that a king's foremost duty was to produce a healthy heir to ensure the stability and continuity of the dynasty. Resolute in her belief that the tragedy she endured must not be repeated in the lives of her son and future daughter-in-law, Anne saw the king's sexual initiation as an essential matter. Sex education in European royal families was never systematic. There were no formal lessons, nor was there any instruction on anatomy or hygiene. A king's performance on his wedding night depended entirely on luck. When Louis XIII and Anne were married at the age of 14, no one had ever told the young king what he was supposed to do, so it was hardly surprising that he ultimately failed to consummate the marriage. After Louis XIV entered puberty, Anne assigned royal physicians to closely monitor his sexual development. Every morning, the court physician would carefully inspect the king's bedsheets for any signs of nocturnal emissions. Then, on the day Louis XIV turned 14, the physician finally discovered evidence. According to an amusing rumor, the physician rushed to report his findings to the Queen Mother, supposedly exclaiming, "The king has drawn a map of France this morning." News of the king's map-making quickly spread throughout the Louvre, once again proving that a monarch had no privacy whatsoever. Anne, however, was overjoyed. Her Louis had come of age. Now it was time for him to be introduced to the pleasures of the flesh. But who would take on the role of his instructor? The court was not short of eager noblewomen willing to step forward. Many sought to become the king's first lover, knowing that a royal mistress held a unique position in the French court, often bringing great political and social benefits to her family. Portraits and contemporary descriptions of the young Louis XIV reveal that he was undeniably a strikingly handsome youth. Becoming his first bedmate was an opportunity few would want to miss. Louis XIV was still naive when it came to women, but he couldn't help but notice that something strange was happening around him. Suddenly, there were many warm and affectionate older women doting on him. One day, After finishing his bath, he was walking back from the bathing chamber when a beautiful lady suddenly appeared and tried to embrace him. Startled, he pushed her away and fled in a panic. When Louis XIV, still shaken, recounted the incident to the Queen Mother, Anne was alarmed. She realized that the matter of selecting the king's instructor could no longer be delayed. After careful consideration over the next few days, she finally set her sights on the one-eyed beauty, Catherine de Beauvais. At the time, Catherine was 24 years older than Louis XIV, meaning she was already 38 when she was chosen for the task. However, she remained charming and alluring. Anne had two key reasons for selecting Catherine. First, due to her advanced age, it would be unlikely for Louis XIV to develop a lasting infatuation with a woman so much older than himself, making it difficult for her to monopolize his affections. Second, Catherine came from a merchant family and had no strong connections within the court. The noble class generally looked down on merchants and rarely associated with them. This meant that even if Catherine gained favor, she would not be able to stir up major political upheaval. The Queen Mother was, without a doubt, a shrewd political strategist, always weighing political interests even in matters of her son's sexual initiation. As for Catherine de Beauvais, she was naturally overjoyed upon learning that she had been chosen. The fact that all the young ladies of the court had schemed tirelessly only to be outmatched by a one-eyed woman made her victory even sweeter. Just imagining the envious glances of those noble women was enough to make Catherine grin from ear to ear. Under Anne's careful orchestration one evening, Louis XIV, dressed in his nightclothes, was led into a warm, dimly lit chamber. The air was filled with the scent of expensive incense. On the grand bed, a woman draped in sheer silk, her bare shoulders subtly visible, reclined gracefully and extended her hand toward the young king. She spoke softly, "Come, Your Majesty, today's lesson will be your most pleasurable one." At that moment, several attendants stepped forward, helped the king out of his garments, and quietly shut the doors behind him. After the lesson, Catherine went to the Queen Mother to report on the progress. Smiling, she reassured Anne, "Don't worry, everything went smoothly. You will have many grandchildren. History would prove her right." Louis XIV himself was more than pleased with his first lesson. According to court attendants, the young king was so exhilarated that he began visiting Madame de Beauvais' chambers twice a day. From the age of 14 to 16, for nearly 2 years, Louis XIV regularly paid visits to his first lover. At the age of 15, Louis XIV unexpectedly impregnated a maidservant, the daughter of a court gardener. When the news reached the Queen Mother, she was delighted. To her, this was clear proof that the young king had strong reproductive capabilities. She generously compensated the pregnant maid and her family, ensuring their well-being. 2 years later, having completed his training, Louis XIV no longer required the services of Madame de Beauvais. As a token of gratitude for her 2 years of careful instruction, the king elevated her husband, Pierre de Beauvais, to the rank of baron, allowing a merchant family to ascend into the nobility. Additionally, Queen Anne granted the Beauvais family a valuable plot of land at 68 Rue Saint-Antoine in the Marais district of Paris, along with a substantial monetary reward. Madame de Beauvais was also granted a rare privilege, a lifelong right to attend the king's Petit Lever. The Petit Lever was a highly exclusive morning ritual in which the king, upon waking, received a select group of trusted individuals in his bedroom. Only royal family members and a few close confidants were permitted to attend, demonstrating the special place Catherine de Beauvais held in Louis XIV's heart. During the construction of the Hôtel de Beauvais, Catherine faced a shortage of stone materials. She appealed to Louis XIV for assistance, and without hesitation, he ordered that a portion of the Louvre's renovation stones be diverted for her use. As a result, the façade of the Hôtel de Beauvais is made from the exact same stone as the Louvre. The Hôtel de Beauvais has remarkably retained its original appearance from Catherine's time. The walls are still engraved with the joint coat of arms of Pierre and Catherine, making it a masterpiece of French Baroque architecture. Today, it serves as the seat of the Paris Administrative Court of Appeal. While it remains closed to the public for most of the year, visitors can explore its historical sections during European Heritage Days. Catherine de Beauvais lived a carefree life in Paris, continuing to have numerous lovers. In fact, she seemed even more sought after than during her time at court. After all, she had been the first woman of the king, and that alone was enough to excite many noblemen. Her husband, Pierre de Beauvais, never appeared to object to her affairs. After all, the honor and fortune of his entire family rested on Catherine. After Pierre's death, Catherine found herself entangled in financial troubles, eventually falling into debt and facing the threat of bankruptcy. Forced to consider selling the Hôtel de Beauvais, she was on the brink of losing her home. At this critical moment, Louis XIV once again came to her aid. Upon learning that Catherine was being forced to sell her mansion due to debt, the king purchased the property himself and gifted it back to her, a token of gratitude for all that she had done for him. Even in her 70s, Catherine remained a frequent visitor to the royal court. Every time she appeared before Louis XIV, she was met with special attention from the king. Her presence was nothing short of legendary, and her visits caused such a stir that even in the grand halls of Versailles, she became a spectacle, a rare feat in a palace accustomed to extravagance. Catherine's student did not disappoint her. Louis XIV went on to have more than 40 mistresses and fathered numerous legitimate and illegitimate children. After living a life of luxury and prestige, Catherine de Beauvais passed away in 1689 at the age of 75, leaving behind a legacy as one of the most fascinating figures of her time.